We think they're moving north. With a lot of the recent news, do you think it's just going to continue to grow?
Absolutely. I think Canada's sleepwalking, and we're sleepwalking into a bloodbath. A few data points. As I said, Justin Trudeau removed the visa requirement for Mexican citizens in 2018. And we know that increased the flow of course, Mexican cartels setting people up in the Canadian cities. And we have, former Canada border officials coming out now openly and saying that Canada has known about this and it's increasing the entrenchment of the cartels.
You think they're moving north? With a lot of the recent news, do you think it's just going to continue to grow?
Absolutely. I think Canada's sleepwalking, and we're sleepwalking into a bloodbath. A few data points. As I said, Justin Trudeau removed the visa requirement for Mexican citizens in 2018. And we know that increased the flow of course, Mexican cartels setting people up in the Canadian cities. And we have, former Canada border officials coming out now openly and saying that Canada has known about this and it's increasing the entrenchment of the cartels. Furthermore, as you said, experts do believe that the southern border is being more sealed in a military way by the American government. So the cartels already set up strong are just using that massive and porous Canadian border. And I have more stories to report about how they're doing it. I won't scoop myself today, but again, I'll give a hint. It's not just on the ground. All manner of transportation should be including airplanes. All right. So let me finish my answer this way. I also did a story, let's say about 4 months ago, quoting a senior American official that I couldn't name, who said, look, Canadians, you need to be concerned about exactly what you said. Now that Trump has effectively cracked down on the southern border, there's going to be an increasing flood because, simply the cartels will go where they can get a freer border. And a day after I wrote that story, another news story popped up about an immigration hearing in Canada where a Sicario was trying to re-enter Canada, and his reasons, re-enter Vancouver, his reasons to the immigration judge were he was afraid that Donald Trump was cracking down in the United States. So the evidence right there just shows it, in a couple of anecdotes.
Yeah, it's an interesting time right now. I'm getting interested to see. I've been to Canada a couple times at the border to see it, but I believe it is a major threat that we're not paying attention to. What are some red flags, and policymakers that they're missing? What are some things that we probably need to start implementing over there in Canada that can actually help? Is there any way that America can make decisions that will assist in the efforts of this as well?
Yeah, I'll be frank. I mean, again, I think the American government, with regards to tariffs on China and getting tough with the world as the world becomes more dangerous in terms of world war threats, it's hard for countries around the world to accept that they're now being hit by America with increased demands for security and tariffs. But I've been trying to educate people that, Washington's not asking in a nice way anymore, but they're asking some reasonable things. That Canada absolutely has been horrific on anti-money laundering. Like, I've reported with confidence that over $1 trillion has been laundered, into Canadian cities, over the past 10 years. This is this same Vancouver model system. And it's the type of thing that's pushing, honest, workers and taxpayers out of cities. So if you don't crack down on the drugs, maybe you should start caring about why your young generation can't afford homes. So the money laundering is one thing. Another red flag is transnational organized crime and how it's now used, as we know, by the worst governments in the world: Iran, China, Russia. They're the ones that are both running interference operations and using drug dealers to do it and threatening our citizens with death, basically. There's a story that just came out of London the other day on Reuters that said British cops now say that China, Russia, and Iran are running life-threatening operations more and more on our Western soil. So these are red flags, that I'm seeing increasingly in Canada. But the problem is, as I say, Canada's government, and when I say that, I mean the Liberal government that's been in power for over 10 years now, is dragging its heels in a strange way in terms of not wanting to, change laws to crack down on these foreign organized crime and hostile states.
The southern border doesn't just separate the United States and Mexico. It also splits political alliances, ideologies, and sometimes even families. And decisions about immigration, addressing cartel violence, and the border often dictates who will hold the most powerful positions in the world. But what if there was a resource that could cut through the background noise and give perspective from the front lines of the border crisis? I am Vince Vargas, former Army Ranger and Borstar operator, and the host of Ironclad's original podcast, Borderland. I am also the author of a groundbreaking book called Borderland that reveals the untold story of America's first line of defense and special operations of the United States Border Patrol. In the book, I give an inside look at the U.S.-Mexico border through events and life-changing experiences that I took part in during my years of service. I break down the distinct difference between border security and immigration policy through real-world scenarios and insights only available from the front lines. My goal is to counter misconceptions and misinformation about the highly volatile stretch of North America that connects the U.S. and Mexico. So head over to wherever you buy books and pick up a copy today. For you reporting this, obviously you're one of very few that are talking about it in Canada. Like I said, we haven't had a lot of people reach out to us. Kat was the first one that we were like, well, let's see what she knows about Canada. I think there's two other Canadian journalists that we've interviewed. I think one, and then you're the second. Has it put you in any kind of fear of retaliation? You talked about earlier that you've had some credible threats. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk about that. First of all, I mean, you're right. Kat, myself, and a few others are the ones pushing the real knowledge and the real fact finding here. And yet, on the other hand, as I think a lot of more critics are noticing, Canada's, quote, mainstream media is basically saying the opposite. So it's not an easy path for reporters to break the facts when their government and most of the media is saying the opposite. So, like, a lot of credit to Catherine, that's doing some very brave work digging in, with her sources within the cartels, and for me, it's getting my sources. As I said, I wanted to be a lawyer at one point, so I'm comfortable getting information from cops, lawyers, intelligence agents, that kind of thing. I can navigate that world well. And by doing it so well, yeah, I'll tell you that, I was asked to testify in Canada's Parliament in exactly 2 years ago, July 2023. I was asked to testify about the stories that I broke about how China was interfering in our federal elections and China was threatening our Canadian politicians. And I testified. It's like answering a summons. I couldn't avoid it. I went in and told my story. 2 days later, our federal national security police unit knocked on my door of my home, and they, where this is going. They turned on the tape recorder and said, "We have a duty to warn you that we've received a credible threat due to, your reporting on China." So that was, of course, I was just, very gutted, terrible. I just could not believe that in a first world, supposedly formerly great nation like Canada, a credible reporter is getting this kind of thing. And the officer even told me, we would usually only be reaching out to gangsters with this kind of legal duty to warn, right? So for me, that just crystallizes exactly what's going on here. As I told you, we have Canadian politicians. Another one just the other day, a big city mayor that got a death threat. This is happening on Canadian soil exactly because these international organized crime and hostile state networks are too strong in Canada. So what does it mean? We need I'll just say we basically need an uprising of information and outrage among Canadians saying, no, I'm not putting up with that anymore, right? Because good, honest people doing their job should not be receiving the same sort of warnings as gangsters. And to go further than that, it's not that Canadian police have offered me any protection. I do training with a former Canadian special operations guy, right? So yeah, it's a difficult place to be in Canada. I don't like it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate when you're just doing your job and you start getting threats.